I noticed that this week, Michelle Obama's book came out. I was listening to her in an interview. She shared about the book. There was many things in what she was saying that I connected to. And I thought, well, if I'm connecting to these things, I know I'm not the only woman out there that is. I mean, she's a phenomenal woman, and she's been able to use her platform to not only be an example, but to actually make impact and make change. Get ready. So one of the things that really stuck out to me, because it's something that I've been talking about all year. So immediately when I heard it, it jumped out at me. And it was, your story is powerful. And Michelle was talking about how she wanted to save her story so that she could tell it. And she wanted to be able to tell it in her voice and in her own way. I thought that was powerful, because people, when they're watching you and they're looking at you just like her in the public eye, especially with someone like her, they are forming opinions and thoughts about you and who they think you are. And then they create a narrative based on their perception of you. But it's not, oftentimes, it's not the real you. So I thought it was powerful that she made the statement that she wanted to tell her, she wanted to save her story so she could tell it. And so she could tell it in a way that reflects who she is, who she really is, and allow us to see that Michelle is more than just President Obama's wife. She has many levels and many layers and many dimensions to her. And I thought to myself, how many times do we let other people tell our story for us? How many times do we keep quiet and we don't speak up? How many times do we allow, and now again, I just want to preface by saying that you don't want to get caught up in what people are saying. That's something different. What I'm saying is telling your story for yourself. And one of the things that I noticed that when she was talking, telling her story was just a reflection of her journey. It was a reflection of her journey through her eyes, and not through the eyes of media and not through the eyes of the public, but through your own eyes. And as she began to talk in the interview, it was really powerful, because I started to think about my own journey, and I started to think about my own story, and how when I tell you my story, I'm telling you so much more than what you see. So I'm not recounting necessarily to you the events that have happened in my life, because if you know me and you're my friend, you've seen some of that. What I'm telling you is who I became in the process, not just recounting events. You are telling people, you are letting them peer into your soul, and you're telling them who you are. You're explaining the inner work, the self-work, the healing that you had to go through. You're talking about those silent motivational moments when you were all alone and it was just you and your thoughts and you and God. You're telling them about those, how you felt in those moments of defeat. You're explaining to them the joys that you felt in the moments of victory. You're allowing them to walk with you down memory lane, to see how you processed challenges and how they impacted you, and how you had to reassess your life, and how you had to make changes, and how you had to learn your lessons. That's why your story is so powerful. If someone else is telling your story, they're not going to tell it like that. Why? Because they're not you. They're not you. Now, there are some people that have insight and privy to you more so than others, and they might be able to shed some light on who you are, but no one can tell your story like you. One of the things that she said was, truth is more complex than you realize. And I had to ponder that for a second. And she made that statement when she was asked about her friendship with the former president, George Bush, not the father, but the son. And I guess the person was like, why is everybody so fascinated about your friendship, about your connection? And she says, because you're seeing people come together that the world and the media says shouldn't be friends. Isn't that powerful? The world says that they shouldn't be friends, but yet they're friends. So she was saying the truth is more complex. Why is the truth complex? Well, because when someone does something or when someone says something, it needs to be dissected. You have to look at the reasons, you have to look at motives, you have to look at desires, you have to look at the pain that they're going through, you have to look at the joy that they're experiencing. You have to assess all of that when you're looking at what someone does and what someone doesn't do. And she talked about how when you go through life, we experience situations, and she calls them cuts, C-U-T-S, cuts. And she said, some of them are small, like paper thin, like, let's see, someone not being nice to you when you were in the third grade. Someone pulling your ponytail when you're on the school bus. And then it progresses up to things that are bigger, like perhaps someone groping you or someone calling you outside your name. And so it's various levels of different cuts that we carry, and those wounds and those scars that we carry. And what I got from that was, we can't let our pain define us. We have to let the lessons that we learn define us. So you have to tell yourself, if I can walk out of this situation, be it I'm battered, bruised, wounded, devastated, completely thrown, but if I can somehow walk out of this situation learning something about myself, about the world around me, about the people that I'm dealing with, if I can grow, then that will define me and not the pain. If you let your lesson learned define you, you become better. That's how you can extract good out of bad things. Life is not perfect, but life is still beautiful. Things are not going to always go my way, but I can allow it to, the happenings of my life, to work for me and not against me. So getting back to telling your story, and you may not have a platform like Michelle Obama. You may not be able to speak to thousands of people, but listen, guys, we're all connected. So you speaking to one person, that one person could go on and impact millions based on the impact you had on them. So you may not have this large platform, but you can make a large imprint or leave a large footprint in the world just by telling your story to the neighbor across the street. If they need to hear it, share it. Do you struggle with that? I know I did. I struggled with telling my story for a long time. You hear so many people tell these stories of overcoming insurmountable odds. I mean, just, having, going through war, losing a leg, losing an arm, having, your home burned down in a fire, just devastating loss, being diagnosed with a terminal illness, given 6 months to live, losing a child, just things that you just cannot even imagine. So I'm hearing these stories and I'm inspired by these stories, but then I start thinking, this is years ago, guys. I've gotten over it now, but I'm taking you back. I'm taking with you on my journey. I'm telling you my story, okay? So I would hear all these things and I would think, wow, no one wants to hear what I have to say. I mean, geez, after surviving a volcano, why would they want to hear about my day-to-day issues? So I convinced myself that because my story wasn't dramatic enough, that my story wasn't worthy to be told. That's a lie. You matter. I matter. Our voices are speaking to someone. What I came to realize was the fact that I've lived a life and I've managed in this crazy, chaotic world filled with so much evil and hate, yet still filled with good. I managed to, in all of that, live a life where I didn't get caught up in drugs, where I didn't I didn't involve myself in promiscuous behavior, that I didn't fall prey to depression. That is a story. That's a story. The fact that I was able to make it through, that's a story. And there's an audience out there. There's someone out there that can connect to that. There's someone that can say, I see myself in her. Or say someone is listening to my story. Not that I haven't had issues, because I've dealt with some things. But say someone is listening to my story and they have had these issues that I've never experienced, but they see me doing well. Don't you think that inspires them and gives them hope to say, hey, listen, there are people out there that are overcoming. They're surviving. They're thriving. They're walking with strength and dignity and honor. I can do it too. So I had to learn that although my story is not sensational, as they say, because I don't want to use that word to demean anyone's story, but it's my story, it's my voice, and it matters. Everyone's story matters. Everyone's voice matters, because there is someone out there that can connect. That's what I love about the International Interview Series. I love that series. Guys, if you haven't gotten your hands on it, I will put a link on so that you can get your hands on it. What it is it's pre-recorded interviews from 30 global entrepreneurs and leaders. So every single day in the month of November, you can log on to your dashboard or log into your dashboard, and you have a brand new interview for each day in November. And what I love so much about the series is that you're seeing people from all walks of life, and they're saying to you, and they look seemingly ordinary like you and I, but you're hearing their stories of victory. You're hearing their stories of triumph. You're hearing their stories of defeat. One woman said her car was repossessed, and here she is trying to help people, inspire people, and she lost her car. But she was able to bounce back. So many different stories of seemingly ordinary people making impact and making a difference and making creating a pathway to bring about change into the world, into their sphere of influence. So it's not that they're ordinary, meaning that they're dull or they're boring. That's quite the opposite. These are fascinating people. But what makes them ordinary is because they're relatable. When you're listening to a woman talk about, a 19-year-old talk about how she had so much anxiety that she couldn't even go to school. She couldn't even sit through her classes, and she couldn't go through her lesson because she was riddled with anxiety at 19, right? You think 19, you don't have any cares in the world, but she was suffering. But somehow she was able to conquer that anxiety, and she was able to move on and become an entrepreneur. And now has been awarded the #1 recruiter in her country for her company, and now has a team of 100 people under her at 19 years old. So it's not that these people are different from you, but they're just relatable. And that's what I love about the series. And that's what I loved about Michelle Obama in her interview. She spoke in a way that you could look at her and say, I see that. I see myself. While you may not agree with her politics, you may not support her views, but we're talking about human to human, person to person, finding ways to be inspired and motivated.